Just to give you some information on next presenter. As I would have indicated before, she is an employee of exporTT and she holds the position of Senior Export Development and Promotion Officer. Shirley has worked in organizations such as the Export Development Corporation, the Tourism Industrial Development Company, and exporTT as well. Her working experience spans over 20 years in the trade arena. Over the years, she has been involved in international trade promotion activities such as trade and investment missions, trade fairs, and market research in countries such as the UK, USA, Canada, Brazil, Mexico, Latin America, and the Caribbean. Her experience also includes trade negotiations and trade certification, which involves the facilitation of preferential access of goods under bilateral trade agreements. She has also sat on several Trinidad and Tobago delegations at customs and CARICOM technical meetings. Help me welcome this morning Ms. Shirley Noel.
Thank you for that introduction, Maria. Good morning, everyone. We packed our bags and we went off to Guyana and to Suriname. And of course, like any typical travel visit to any country, persons are interested to find out what you saw, what you did. And this is exactly why I'm here this morning, to share with you what transpired, what we actually had consultation and who with, and the deliberations that led to this final report this morning is what I would share with you. Of course, starting off with our presentation with Guyana, I would just like to share with you some information that we received that, in our view, was really dynamic information on the market in Guyana. But just to say that the information that will be shared will be something that would not be new to most of you, because I saw a number of hands that were raised when the headcount was made by Nigel. So please bear with us for those of you who are familiar with the market. The others, I hope through the end of my presentation, you will be able to have some areas where there's sort of gray and you're able to maybe field some questions at us, and we would be able to support you with respect to additional information to your rapporteur. Okay, what we'll be looking at in my presentation this morning, sharing the market characteristics. Then I would also share with you the import and the health regulations as they relate to Guyana. We'll also look at a product overview for some of the products that Nigel made reference to in his presentation, and also the success factors as we saw it following the discussions that were held with some of the distributors and also through the discussions held with the various trade agencies. And finally, of course, the key market developments and the products of interest, because normally when you go to markets, there would always be someone who would have some additional information in terms of broadening their portfolio. So I would share with you some of that, and also as the presentation would be concluded based on the recommendations that we would have going forward. The market dynamics, as we saw it in the Guyana market, is that the shoppers are the ones who are really brand loyal. Now, you would hear this and you believe, well, what are they really saying? We are all brand loyal to products. But what has happened is that the number of distributors we spoke with said that the Guyanese population, their shopping pattern is that once they've stuck, and mainly, I would say, to the older shoppers or consumers, once they stuck to a brand, they continue until there is an opportunity where they see that someone is bringing a product on the market that you get better value for the dollar. And I think that is something that is common throughout any market across the world. The other point that I would like to share with you, an observation, is that the number of distributors that we spoke with, they mentioned that the television advertisement is one of the cheapest, and that was alarming to us because we know the situation here in Trinidad. But they said that it is the very cheap aspect or avenue in which they would take to do the various advertisements. Namely, too, because there are not a number of newspapers in Guyana, so it is the alternate in terms of making the promotion for your products the more appealing one. Nigel mentioned earlier that border, the Starbrook market and maybe border markets are the ones where you find a lot of the trade taking place. What I'd like to share with you with this morning is that that market is still the traditional area for the shoppers. And also because of the location of the Starbrook market, where it's really situated at the transport hub, you find that a number of persons would still be going to that area to do the traditional afternoon shopping, pick up 1 or 2 items. Just to share with you, though, with respect to the retail trade, the whole concept of supermarkets is really now developing across Guyana. So you find that the volume movers, which would be, as I said in the video, a number of companies or stores would be selling everything and anything. And I think you have heard this before, because when we visited some of the distributors, one of the things they said when we asked, well, what is your product portfolio? What is it you specialize in? And one gentleman said everything and anything that could be sold, he would sell it. So that in itself gave us an idea as to what really happens there. And it brings me to the other point, that the parallel trade is one of the biggest competition in the economy, because as they would say, and I think you all are familiar with that phrase, the borders are very porous for Guyana, so that everything comes in and it competes with the regularized trade, as I would like to refer to it. And of course, this would pose a number of challenges for those who are in the business of exclusivity, because you would find that, and I think this happened the morning when we went to a meeting where the gentleman was so appalled, he was sharing with his colleague that they carry a range of, say, household or chemical items that a gentleman actually came to him with the brand and the various logos, nicely put together brochure, selling the identical products. So the competition is very stiff. So looking into things like exclusivity would really pose a challenge for some of our exporters, or any exporter as a matter of fact. Just want to share with you now, in terms of the information we gathered in the market, and now what we really found in going to markets to do research, a number of information would come up concerning the markets. And this would be from the perspective of the trade agencies as well as the various distributors or importers in the market. To let you know the terms of the Brazil relationship and Guyana. Now, you're aware that Guyana is surrounded or bordered by Brazil, and Brazil right now is in the process of constructing, in fact, it has been constructed, and just let me share that information in terms of the Takuta Bridge. Takuta Bridge was completed in 2009, and it was opened on the 31st of July 2009. Now, the bridge has been completed. That brings the trade closer between Brazil and Guyana. But what the challenge is here for the Guyanese, and maybe in some instances for Brazil, at this point in time, the roads have not been completed. So whilst there is a bridge that links the two cities, the two countries rather, the road does not provide the kind of free flow for the transportation and taking your goods across. So there's still some areas of challenges there. The other thing we found out with respect to Brazil and Guyana is that they have the partial scope agreement, which was really covering just a few categories of goods in the basket. And for just information, maybe our own opinion is that in looking at it, we've seen where some of the products tend to favor the Brazilian basket. But of course, those are things when you're negotiating partial scopes that you have to consider as a government. The additional thing that happens in terms of the relationship with Brazil and Guyana is that the northern region of Brazil really right now is presenting a number of market opportunities for the Guyanese businesses. In fact, one gentleman shared with us the fact that there are a number of Brazilian companies, because of the proximity of the northern side, who are actually conducting business across in Guyana, for example, in the area of clay tiles or so. So there are a number of businesses that are coming up on that side of the border for Guyana. So the relationship is building with Brazil, and of course, as I speak later on in the presentation, you will see what maybe opportunities may exist for us as exporters to Guyana. The Guyana-Suriname relationship. As, of course, another border country, we see that items from Holland are being transshipped into Guyana. Now, this is really shared with us on the point of view as being a challenge, because what is said by the Guyanese population or the distributors and the agencies we had conversations with is that these products are coming into the country through the transshipment, and therefore they're not really covering any set of duties or so. And of course, the penetration there is not through the regularized trade as you would expect. Also, trading is prohibited, and that is due to the route constraint. I think I made a mention to it with respect to the Takuta Bridge not Takuta. In terms of the terrain that the Guyana and Suriname has, they are not able to transport the goods as easily, and they will have to use the sea route. So that's another area where there's a bit of challenge, and the relationship as it exists with Suriname. Illegal trade, I think most of us in the room here would have heard things like that. It's not something that we really like to speak about or speak to, but it does exist. And that is where most of the challenges lie with respect to the goods that are on the market and in terms of maybe the currency and so. One of the complaints that was mentioned with respect to Suriname and Guyana was the differentiated taxes on certain items. Now, what we found out is that a lot of people travel to Suriname to do shopping, and the number of items coming in would mainly be in the area of electronics and the premium alcohol. I think maybe some of you here are familiar with the Johnny Walker Blues and Greens. So those are the kind of products that would normally come over. One agency we visited, though, did comment on the fact that they have challenges with the electronic items coming in from Suriname, and that is something that sometimes they would have to flag from time to time. Of course, as CARICOM, we're not expected to pay duties on some items, but these items come in at a reduced rate because they're coming from Suriname, and they're mostly goods from China or from the Netherlands. We just continue to share with you some information on Venezuela relationship with Guyana. The Guyana-Venezuela relationship, what we found out is that there's a bit of trade taking place. With respect to the Petro-Caribe agreement, they're actually trading rice for petrol. So that is something that is very strong with Guyana. And in fact, some information came to us with respect to an investor who is currently actually going into rice production at a very large scale. And that too, I believe, will be contributing to the arrangement with the Venezuela, Guyana. Also, Venezuelan company is looking at seeking to set up a bauxite processing plant in Guyana, and we know that Guyana is known for its bauxite, so there too there's another opportunity where Guyana is having a lot of development in terms of its linkages with its bordering neighbors. Small trade is another area where the river, they call the Nikiri, where business is taking place, and I did make mention to the illegal trade that is taking place. So things that are not coming through the regular flow of the business would be coming across the Nikiri River from Venezuela into Guyana. Of course, like everything else, we all have some sort of relationship or concern, whichever way we may think to look at it really, and that is the China relationship. Now, China, when we spoke with a number of distributors, and I think the mention of China was mainly in the sense that they saw them as competitors, but competitors in the sense that it is at a disadvantage for Trinidad and Tobago products because they're the preferred source of supply for the Guyanese. One of the reasons being that they are willing to negotiate price, and I think we had done some studies in other markets, rather I should say research in other markets where concerns came up, for example, with respect to Trinidad and Tobago exporters not necessarily being willing to negotiate price. And if I should mention at this point in time that price is the factor that drives the consumer in the Guyanese market. So I think that's where the Chinese exporters have an edge on us with respect to negotiating price with the distributors, importers. Also, there are a number of Chinese bottom-of-the-house businesses taking place in Guyana. And this is because the Chinese are supported by their governments through soft loans so that they are able to set up business in foreign markets. And I think soon we will be seeing things like that, if not already happening, because we see a number of restaurants. Some of us look at the restaurants and other types of businesses that are run by the Chinese population. I want to take you now into the import and health regulations as it relates to Guyana. Now, CROSCU, our CARICOM Regional Organization for Standards and Quality, they have harmonized the imports regulations and the health requirements for all of the CARICOM member states. However, with respect to Guyana, while that is so, we pay no duties on the CARICOM origin goods. There is an administrative fee of, right now it stands at $100 Guyanese for at the border with the customs, where the brokers will clear goods at the cost of $100 administrative fee. Also, we look at the environmental tax. Now, this was a contentious issue with a customer in Suriname, and my colleague maybe will speak to it, but I just want to touch on it as it related to our Carib development. The tax is at a percentage of 10 per plastic bottle, 10 Guyanese dollars. And what they are saying is that this money in the initial instance was being taxed because, and especially it is only on the foreign imports to the market. It was being taxed for the purpose of doing developmental work in Guyana. And I think if you have been following the news in Guyana, you would hear that the opposition is against the tax, and there is talk for it to be removed. But somehow, while we were in the market, we never did get confirmation that the tax was removed, and we're only hearing that it will be removed. Some people have the view that it has been removed, but that is soon to be checked on with respect to what was coming out of the discussions in the Guyana Parliament. But just to build a little more on that, what is happening is that while they're taking the taxes from our Carib people, they are not able to say what are the volumes. They cannot check the bottles to know what is the volume that is being traded in the market. So the returns, what they said, that they are not going to be sending back their bottles. They are mostly trading with disposables. But to get back to the issue of the plastic, the tax on the plastic bottles, what is happening, I think one distributor said that he's actually going to take them to court because he knows his bottles, and when you look right across from the Parliament, there are a number of plastic bottles throughout the city. So they are arguing that they're taking this tax unfairly from them, and they're going to be pursuing the matter further. So that is with respect to the government tax on the environmental tax, rather, on the plastic bottles. It's also interesting to note that the distribution system, the markups are very varied in terms of the various levels of distribution. When we spoke with distributors, and of course this information is, I wouldn't call it hearsay, but just discussions from the point of view of the distributor. And what they said, in some instances, some persons, and we did an average, some person would have said 10 to 20% at distributor level. Some may have given us higher than that. And in terms of the wholesaler information, they generally said that the markups on the products would have been 15 to 18%. Retailers generally would take 5 to 30% markup. Now, we mentioned earlier the municipal markets where most of the trade is still taking place. Their markups would be sometimes around 5% because they move volumes. So that is really the structure of the market as it stands right now. Now, I've given you some information that we had considered to be dynamic information pertaining to the market. What I would like to do now is to take you through some product information for some of the sectors that we had focused on in the market. First, I would share with you information on the pasta, the category of pasta that we saw and what is happening there. The observation in the trade, and the product information I'm sharing here would mainly be focusing on what we saw in the trade, and also in some instances where it was available, I would share with you some of the percentage in terms of market imports, the market share of TNT. Once it was available, we would have plugged it into our presentation. So we saw that dried pasta was the most common type of pasta in the market. In addition to that, there was a wide range of long cut and short cut special pastas were also there in the market. For example, most of us go to the supermarkets, and we will have seen, and in fact, we are familiar with items such as bow ties and wheels and all the twirls and shells and elbow pasta. What was prominent on the shelves in the market there was that we saw that the leading brand in the pasta category was the domestic producers, namely Champion, who was followed by Imam. And their #1 seller was really the noodles, the chow mein noodles. And the comment that was made, and I'm not sure it was related to the fact that there are a number of Chinese in the market, but that they'll use a lot of noodles. But the preference is for the Guyanese noodles because, and that's chow mein noodles, because the pasta coming from Trinidad is too dry. So, whereas we know in the market, the conversation when we talk about dry pasta as against the wet pasta will be the fresh pasta rather. They are speaking to just the dried item, but somehow maybe the process that is done from the side of the Trinidad and Tobago products, just using Trinidad as an example, it would be maybe processed to the point that it is not a preferred item in terms of the fact that it's drier than the noodles that are prepared on the Trinidad side. Also in that market, if I share with you, of course, we saw the traditional craft, the mac noodles, mac and cheese, and some specialty items that are coming on, such as the whole wheat and the vegetarian type of pasta. And also the TV dinners are #1. They're now coming on the shelf. And this was akin to the fact that there are a number of television stations, cable stations, where they have food programs. So the people are turning to that style of eating. The next item I would like to share with you is the beverage, the overview on beverages. Now, this presentation, what happened because of the saturation of the number of sodas in the market, we tend to focus mainly on that area. What we saw coming out from our trademark source is that Trinidad and Tobago dominated the market when it came to beverage, and this is in terms of 34% of the imports by Guyana is a representation of Trinidad and Tobago's share or imports. The traditional flavors too, what we saw is the typical flavors of orange, banana, lime, cream soda, grape, apple, etc. And some of us, maybe we know the Banks DIHL Limited as a brewery company, but they do not only brew lagers, but they're also into sodas, soft drinks. And their brand is the IC brand. And also, in terms of competition and rivalry in the market, if I may go that far, is that there is a company called CIDI, which is the Caribbean International Distributors Incorporated. This is a Surinamese company, who happens to be the close rival under the brand of Trill to the Banks company. And just to give you an insight into the Trinidad side of the beverage story for sodas, we have our Buster, who is the #1 challenger on the market. And there was also a little pecan, if I may go that way, that was made with respect to the competition that's happening in the market. And strangely enough, that competition is taking place between Angostura LLB and Solo Bentley. So that's just something for us to, at least I'm not sure, it's something for us to be proud about, or maybe information for if the representatives are here to pay attention to. And of course, just let me share with you that going forward, we'll be sharing where the information is personal with respect to companies getting direct information on their products. We'll be sharing that with you later on too, outside of the information that will be posted on our website. The next product I would like to share with you is on the cleaning chemicals side of the market reviews that we did, and from having conversations with some of the retailers, the supermarkets. Now, just to give you an idea, for those of you who are not familiar with the retail system in Guyana, there are a number of supermarkets. Most of them would be more or less for middle income. They cater to middle to low income. And I can just name one that's considered for middle to high would be the Nigel, which is only one branch. The Bounty is also another supermarket in the Guyana's market that has about 3 to 4 branches. Now, they've started off mainly in the line of poultry, and now they have branched off into other products. The other supermarket that has a number of branches in the country is the Survival. Survival is another one, and they have several branches, and they cater more mainly to the mass market low end. And just if I may add, the thinking of the Guyanese people is that Nigel is considered to be their high-end supermarket. And this being the fact that when you go into that supermarket, you would see that there are a number of foreign brands as against the other supermarkets that cater to the low end. In spite of the fact that the borders porous and the trade almost everything, you tend to see a lot of the foreign brands in that supermarket. So that was just to give you a little insight as to where some of the places that we went to and collected information for these products. In terms of the cleaning chemicals, we looked at the statistics as were presented in the data for 2010-2011, and we saw that based on import statistics for TNT, we are the leading supplier, holding 60% market share for liquid detergents, including dishwashing liquid, bleach, and other detergents. They also saw that cleaning chemicals were the fast-moving, and as I said, some of the information we're sharing with you too. If I go to you and you're selling fish, what would you tell me? But we have to take it because we're gathering from everyone. So if I go to Bounty and we ask you what about the line, what's the fastest-moving product? In terms of chemicals, this was the answer that we got. It would have been the fastest-moving item. So this is information that we got. We compiled it, and we're able to say, okay, considering that we went to Bounty and et cetera, this could be a solid point. Cleaning chemicals would be as strong, and Trinidad and Tobago really is. And of course, when we saw the shells, we saw that Trinidad and Tobago was well represented in terms of the line of the cleaning chemicals. So powder was also a very popular item in terms of cleaning products. And what was, I wouldn't say alarming, but strange to us was that one of the distributors we had conversations with said that it was popular also in buckets. And we were thinking, well, if you're telling me on one end that these are low-income people, we expect that they will buy the economy packs and so. But what this was akin to is the fact that it was used in the mining sector. And this is because I believe there is some special enzyme that really does the cleaning much better than the other items that they were traditionally used. So you will see a lot of movement taking place with respect to the chemicals as it relates to soap powders. Construction sector. Fortunately and unfortunately, I think I'll have to go down that road in terms of how much we were able to get. Because as was mentioned earlier, we only spent 1 week in each country. And just, I should mention here that we mainly stayed in Georgetown, so we did not go off to Berbice or any of the other divisions in Guyana. But generally, and I think it may be information that is known to most people, is that Guyana is going through a boom. And because of this, and mainly I should say, is because the government and the private sector are looking to increase the housing stock. So what the government has done is that they have reduced the rate of interest of between 5 to 7% for new homeowners. So I guess if we have relatives over in Guyana or we have opportunities, we might be able to benefit from that, accessing some property or something in Guyana. But just to continue with respect to the construction information that we gather, the aluminum extrusions, which I think we have our local manufacturers here, that is in the market, is traditionally imported from China. And one of the comments that was made with respect to that item is that it is considered, because Trinidad and Tobago products more or less is on the expensive side. So this is something that, of course, we would share with the relevant players in this sector. Under the construction observations, we also looked at the imports, and the construction here would be making reference to some of the PVC fittings and so, that are traditionally imported. And I have to say traditionally because most of the hardware dealers that we were able to have conversations with spoke to the fact that they prefer to trade with Costa Rica and the Dominican Republic. And this too was because they had the preferential access in that we do not have duties on some items because of the trade agreements that exist between Costa Rica, DR, with the CARICOM member states. So this was one of the reasons for the fact that they had a preference for these markets. Paint was another item that we were able to get some information from. And for those of you who are not familiar with the construction industry in terms of the retail level, the largest hardware in Guyana is the national hardware. This is where we got a lot of our information speaking with the owner. And of course, maybe 2 other persons in that sector. And what we found out is that the market is dominated, actually about 70% market share is for the local producer, original, but we were able to take a walk through the hardware, and I think at that same national hardware, we found out that one of our local producers has exclusivity at that shop. But we do have a little loyalty where that area, that category or product is concerned, in that they support the local manufacturer. We were able to look at sauces and condiments, and I think it's just like any other supermarket that we have in Trinidad and Tobago, where when you get in, you see sauces and condiments from a range, just anything you can think about, because people's tastes are changing. But just for me to focus with respect to what is happening with Trinidad and Tobago in terms of Guyana imports, is that we're leading supplier for the sauces and condiments with a percentage of 54. And when we look at the shelves, there was no doubt. I mean, it was just confirmation for us that this is really true. And maybe some further investigations could show opportunities where we can benefit where that is concerned in maybe growing our share. The 3 items that I can speak to that we actually were convinced that they were fast moving was the ketchup, mustard, and mayonnaise. And they are, particularly, they are sold in small sizes. And this was confirmed by a distributor who said that because of the purchasing patterns of the consumers, they tend to sell the items in very small. So we saw the economy packs from the competitors and everybody else's item lined up in the economy sizes, and the small sizes where the mayonnaise and mustard is concerned. Just to say something here, if I could say, I think later on I will share with you in more details, is that when we visited the shelves, I'm not sure the picture is very visible. Yes, it is. In terms of the shelf space and the way that the pricing is written, and there's another picture at the bottom that I will speak to, but this is traditionally how the shelves would look if you have products in the market and you have not been visiting, and this is an opportunity to look at the example of how the pricing is placed. And in addition to that, I think when we looked at one of the products, let me just say ketchup, for example, the economy packs, we had about 3 or 4 competitors just mixed in there, and I think that is cause for concern, because if someone is just coming for ketchup and not looking at brand, if their hand went on the competitor's product, that's the one going to the cashier. So just something to draw attention to. The other thing that was noticeable to us, though, while I said that there are a number of products in terms of sauces and condiments on the shelves, is that we noticeably was the fact that the barbecue sauces were really represented by Kraft and not necessarily our local manufacturers. So this was something that we had to take note of. Just let me share with you briefly, though, what happened with respect to our observation with snacks in the market. Corn snacks and confectionery, such as biscuits and chocolates, are well represented. However, in the case of items such as cutters, what we refer to as cutters, they would not have things like peanuts and chana being part of the spread on the table. One distributor took the opportunity to share with us that in Guyana, you would find that someone would prefer to buy a chicken, or for those who eat the other meats. and go home, cut it up small, and we started that trend here. I noticed we're doing Jira pork and Jira everything. So they tend to be doing cutters in that sense as against gravitating to items like planters that we would normally put on the table. Not to say that these are not items that can find their way into the mainstream with mass consumption. But the opportunities right now is really towards the traditional corn snacks and the biscuit, the confectionaries in the market. One of the things that we, as again I said, we would normally ask the question, and what they said to us was that, of course, outside of the staples, these items were the fastest moving in terms of products on the supermarket shelves. I made a comment earlier on with respect to the display on the shelf. Let me just go back. The display on the shelf, and that is just to show that if you look at the second picture, you'd get a view that the products are neatly stacked and the visibility is there. And this is something that is represented. Actually, it's one of our local exporters. And the care and attention that was paid to that particular stand or those shelves in the supermarket really brought to our attention the fact that our exporters to that market really need to pay some attention in terms of getting in there and making sure that the merchandisers really present the products in the manner in which would appeal to the various consumers when they come into the supermarket. I have another product that I would like to share information on with you, and this is in terms of the tissue paper. And this is not exclusive to the TP, but we all have to go, so I guess we can focus on that. The other thing is that the competition there is really challenged. I shouldn't say challenge rather, but there are 3 competitors in the market. But we have competitors such as in the line of Scott, and of course the Trinidad brand that is prominent in the market. And this was of course confirmed when we look at the statistics, where we saw that Trinidad and Tobago, we had just over 50% of the Guyana import of tissue paper. Exports from the US and Suriname, though, what we notice in the statistics is that it has been growing, and for the case of the US, and this is between the period of 2010 to 2011, in the case of the USA, it had grown an increment of like 110%, and 68% for the competitor, who would be Suriname. Suriname, of course, has a vibrant tissue production that is taking place, and they have a share of the market in Guyana. Of course, there's growth opportunity in this segment, but what we're saying to our exporters is that they have to be mindful of the fast-growing importers to the market, because if the USA and Suriname are growing at those percentages, then we mean to have maybe cause for concern with respect to that, or just step up our game to maintain our market share. I would just like to move on now to share with you some of the things that we saw as, and we'll consider them success factors in terms of the Trinidad and Tobago representation with our range of products in the market. Conversation with the distributors, most of them, they didn't shy away to say that they were very pleased with the Trinidad and Tobago products, and that once the consumers are getting good value for their money, they would continue to hold on to Trinidad and Tobago products. Of course, inside of all of that, you would always hear somebody say, but you know, it could be cheaper, but it's good. It's good, but it could be cheaper. We expect that. But this is one of the good things that we took away from the market. We are standing good in terms of quality and price. So we need to maintain that, or maybe get even higher to higher level if it is possible. Also, I'd just like to say that the Trinidad and Tobago products also enjoy the market share position in most of the categories that I spoke to, and the importers in the market, however, are going directly to the cheaper suppliers, which are the Asian countries. It was so alarming for us one morning. We visited a distributor, of course, at Starbucks Market, and the gentleman, when we were leaving, he offered us a drink. And at the back of the drink had made in Thailand or Vietnam, somewhere there, and I was like, I ain't sure how I'm drinking this. This thing came from where? But that was my personal view. But that is just to share with you that that's the kind of penetration that the Asians are having in the market. So you would get a product from Trinidad and Tobago, you'll get something from Pine Hill, the Bajan product, and then you would see something from Vietnam, and you'd see something from Thailand. All of them competing with the local producer there, the Sunburst, I believe, is the brand, Sunburst brand. So that is what the market looks as in terms of the category of products that we attempted to get as much information as possible from. I mentioned earlier the fact that in terms of the two pictures that I made reference to, and that's what we show as a success factor for some of our exporters, because we all know who the main players are in the Guyanese market. And what we found is that they provided a lot of advertising and promotional support. And for those of you here who might not be in the line of the food and beverage category, or maybe chemicals, whichever category or sector that you are trading in, that you should pay particular attention when getting into contracts with some of your distributors, that these are some of the things you look at if you want to get them to have that kind of loyalty to your product. The other thing that we looked at is that they also visited the market on a regular basis. And through the firm, we found a representative in the market who was actually servicing Suriname and Guyana, and hence the reason why I spoke to the display there being so neatly packaged. And they work with the merchandisers and all of the transport guys. So you have that chain of support, and we need to always maintain that in terms of the relationship building with our clients in those markets. And so we say that it is important in terms of the success factor as an exporter in any market, but I'm speaking to Guyana here, that you have a Trinidad and Tobago representative on the ground for an extended period. Sometimes it is not possible because of the financial situation, but maybe going forward, working it into your marketing plan, someone can at least, if not reside in the countries, but visit as frequently as possible. Just to go through some of the key market developments that are taking place in Guyana, we have the cross-border trade between Guyana and Brazil, and they are looking at strengthening their trade links with the border country, namely Brazil in this instance. And we're saying that for Trinidad and Tobago to benefit from this, that we shouldn't miss out on opportunities that would be arising out of that trade link that is taking place, because while everyone is seeing the opportunity direct in terms of Guyana, Brazil, we can always find some way or means whereby we can get into this. And I say this just to go on to the other point, to share with you that Guyana, the Guyana Manufacturing and Services Association, together with the Small Business Association of Brazil, they are developing marketing strategies for mutual trade, and they are looking at sectors, for example, like chemicals and the food and beverage sector. So there's just two to share with you where you can see opportunities to linkages maybe in terms of joint ventures, but this is something that is unfolding with respect to the market developments in Guyana. Of course, I know we're here today to share with you our findings, and I spoke to the fact that we have some prospects in the market, and that would be under the various categories of the household chemicals. And from what we have observed and from the statistics thus far, of course, we're really looking at statistics in terms of 2010, 2011, because when we go on trade map, what we would see is what countries would have reported thus far. But from coming out of that and from being in the trade, the activities that took place over the 2 weeks, we saw that there's room for growth for TNT in terms of and especially because we have a low-cost production competitive advantage on most of our competitors. Also, the construction goods scam, we saw that government and the private sector development, those downstream finished products, like, for example, the PVCs, and so if we are able to, that we can find some opportunities inside of there, as well as once there's considerable consideration is given, rather, to adjusting prices in the example of the extrusions, that we can have opportunities there also. Pasta, we would say no opportunities in the chow mein noodles, as I outlined to you what is the happenings in the market where that product is concerned. But because once you have competitors in the market, and we see the new categories such as the vegetarian products and the whole wheat, which everyone is turning to, that you can find some opportunity there to be able to make some advancement in increasing market share. Sauces and condiments, well, we're the leader, and what we'd say for any prospects, we can heavily look into seeing how, if it's possible, rather, for us to give craft some competition in terms of the barbecue sauces. And the other products that I'd like to share with you, information on the tissue products. Opportunity, of course, to tap into that market, but that would mainly be from a single roll perspective. Now, we're saying this on the basis of having walked the trade. We saw that number of the consumers coming into the supermarkets would have been picking up, as we would traditionally take up the 4 and 6. They would be taking up 1 roll of toilet paper. And again, we have to respect the fact that there are a number of low-income consumers in the market. So what is happening is that if you are looking to get into that market, single rolls will be an opportunity for you. I think we were kind of taken aback that someone would come in the supermarket for 1 single roll of toilet paper. But it is what it is. The number of low-income persons, and they have to purchase, as their purchasing power could only afford that amount of items to be taken out from the shelves. The other thing that we look at is the beverage. Of course, there's a concentration of the soft drinks in the market. It's more or less kind of saturated, but I didn't speak to juices. But what we saw is that our Nestle, if I may, and our Fruta producer, they are in the market very strong, standing very firmly against the competitors such as the Ocean Sprays and all the other exotic flavors under the Libby's and mostly the USA brands. Just to give you an insight into another area, I mean, once you go into a market to chat with persons, there will be those who are always interested in increasing or enhancing their portfolio. And we were able to get from some of the distributors that we had conversations with information pertaining to interest in styrofoam containers, tissue paper, and tissue in this instance was like napkins on the rolls. Also, someone expressed an interest in mattresses, and there was one distributor in particular who was interested in just exclusivity and increasing them. But that distributor is currently in the line of beverages, so they're interested in expanding their portfolio. As I mentioned earlier, we will be sharing that information with you for those who are in the interest of the items that I've mentioned there. This is the end of my presentation. I'm hoping that you were able to take something out of it. And the session is now open for questions. And please feel free to pose your questions at this point in time.